Yeah, so yeah, I've been involved with Oakland art, probably really involved since like 2005, 2006 with Art Murmur. And Art Murmur was really just a few galleries had opened up in Uptown, and they were trying to figure out a way to get people to come out and work together to make that happen and have the one night a week. I'm sure that other cities had already done some aspect of that. Mary and I ran a gallery in Boston called the Evil Twin Gallery, and we had moved out here in 1998. And I was working with Alex Munn at 33 Grand as an artist, and then Alex said, I know you're not affiliated with a gallery, but could you come to this meeting with us because you've had this experience in Boston with other galleries? And I said, sure, I can do that. And so I went to the meeting, and it was, I think, 21 Grand folks were there. I'm not sure if, I think Rock, Paper, Scissors was there, Mama Buzz, Bootling Gallery, a few other folks. And all I said to them was that you can really take advantage of having this group dynamic here. There's a lot of power in that once you guys get organized, but the most important thing is you have to be open that one day a month so that when people, one evening a month, so when people come out, they're not going to go like way out of their way to a gallery and then find it's closed. You absolutely must, everybody must commit to that first. And then once you get that down and everybody's on that, try to keep the politics out of the whole dynamic. Because every gallery has its own philosophy about art, about how to show art, artists. There are different gallery models. And basically, one of the problems we ran into in Boston is that it got into a sort of a big political wrestling match. And galleries felt that, you know, we had to make almost a manifesto or put a philosophy, wrap a philosophy around what came to be called Art Murmur, but in Boston, I can't remember if we had a name for it. It was some time ago. But I said, keep the politics out, and as a group you can get group discounts on things like invites and advertising, things like that, and then just generate all of this public awareness of coming out on what we decided was a first Friday. And I believe it was Mark at Rock, Paper, Scissors came up with Art Murmur, and that caught on, and we all embraced that. And after about 6 months of those meetings, and I was sort of watched a little bit of politics already creeping in. It's kind of inevitable it's human nature, especially in groups like that. I just sort of stepped out and just figured it was let it grow organically and become its own thing. And then last year, so I would go to Art Murmur periodically. I would cover it in my blog. I have a blog at bunnywax.wordpress.com, and then I would cover the shows, and then I would help out with Art Murmur now and then. And then I was on the board a couple of years ago for about a year. And that was really interesting because you saw how big Art Murmur had become, and it's almost become a victim of its own success. It's so unwieldy and large, and the galleries are concerned that it's no longer about the art. It's no longer about the galleries. It's become more of a street fair. But I also look at it like, you know, this is a very unique Oakland thing. So everybody I've ever brought to Art Murmur, even in its current iteration, is completely blown away by the energy of Art Murmur. So I think there's some sort of balance in there, and I'm sure that everybody's got their opinion about what works and what doesn't work about Art Murmur, but I don't know, it was fun to work on the board, and I was sort of kind of a brass tacks guy. Like, you know, if you needed an extra porta potty, I'd be the guy to make the phone call. You know, the not glamorous work, like things that people needed to get done, I would say, I'll take that task on and I'll do that one thing, so, yeah.
You managed to keep a really positive attitude about your involvement.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you look at these, well, think about how uniquely interesting that is. Yeah. Yes. Think about how uniquely interesting it is to see a city be able to maintain something like that. You know, it's a very unique situation. So that alone is worth investing time in, and really getting into sort of nitpicking it. I don't think that is constructive in any way. You know, why not look at, you know, how do you take the best elements of it and keep pushing that forward? And then anything that's more of a logistics issue or other political issues, either people can work that out between themselves or, let it happen organically. You can't force it. You know, Art Murmur is incorporated, expanded, incorporated. You know, I've gone back and forth, expanded, smaller, you know, and I think that's all just part of the natural process. Yes. Yeah. talk about it and they'd want to get involved, and somebody might want to get a photo op or do some opportunity with it, but then they chuck you off to some other office, and then you may or may not get results from talking to a particular person on the phone. There were plenty of times when the city did do things like the busing and back and for the shuttle bus and other things that the city would try out. Because I think Oakland, the city of Oakland, saw a big advantages to Art Murmur. I think it was just nobody really knew how to develop it or contain it or control it or guide it. So everybody had different opinions, and I think the galleries, by their very nature, were a little skeptical of like the city involvement. But I think they've meshed together pretty well with the street closures and all that. Yeah. So it's improved. Yeah, I think so.
Well, how about this body of work?
Sure. I'm going to put the hands down and get a little drink of water. But, well, no, I'll keep the hands. Yeah, this body of work, Happy Accidents, came about, it's been about a year that I've been working on this colorful work. Prior to this, I was doing a lot of pen and ink and a lot of different characters. And I think part of it was probably turning 50 and just coming to the realization that I had a career up to this point and that I had a certain level of success with that work up to this point, the black and white work, but that I was beginning to feel that it was becoming rote, like I was executing the beginning part of a particular piece of work or playing with that and designing it, and then just going through the execution process of rendering it, and not really having a lot of play in between, not having a lot of subtractive process or back and forth. So my goal was, I really just asked myself, like, what was it about art? I've always made art even as a small child, and what was it about art that really made it worthwhile for me? And it's really about the joy and the play space and having fun with it. And it's also a struggle, but also the struggle. It's make it closer to sort of the experience of life. Just make it work, but also make it fun and make it joyous and make it have a lot of experiments and a lot of accidents and mistakes and sort of just the stuff I originally worked with when I was first making art. So really, it became about going into painting that had subtractive process on panels. The sculptures were, I used to do these highly rendered sculptures, very detailed with a lot of form, and then I started kind of dumbing them down, simplifying them, really smoothing off the form and letting all the paint and other parts of it express the sculpture and let the character come through the painting versus trying to really force the form on it and preconceive it in any way. So trying to keep it spontaneous. That was really the goal here. So yeah, painting offered the opportunity for me, and this particular kind of sculpture offered the opportunity for me to get back into the play space and just have a lot of fun with it. The color, I was very intimidated by color. It's funny, I was a painter in school. I went to Massachusetts College of Art. I graduated in 1988 with a BFA in painting. And I was doing these large figurative expressionistic paintings that were pretty crazy, a little cartoony, a little Philip Guston, a little, I don't know, just kind of messy, but palette knife oriented, just really aggressive. Yeah, kind of a little angry. I was kind of an angry young man. And then I think as time's gone on, I have a great wife, I have a great life, I live in Oakland, the weather's beautiful, there's a million artists here, I get to engage with everyone. You get a broader view on life, you get happier, and so I was hoping that the work was starting to reflect that more and more over time. And then now I've gotten to the point where, I'm not saying I've taken all the seriousness out of my work, because I feel like hopefully there's still a lot of tension in the work, and and the narrative is still compelling enough that it draws people into the work. And has that element of seriousness to it, but at the same time, I want people to feel the humor and the happiness and the joy. Yeah, they're a little. I'm trying to remember how I describe them, but they're kind of misfits, But I mean, we're all sort of misfits in a way, aren't we? I mean, so I'm trying to capture that nature, that part of human nature, the misfit part. Yeah.
Who wants to realist, like very real? There's a certain thing that you go to that kind of gives you inspiration, or there's anything you look at and do that gives you kind of like
yeah.
now.
Yeah, So the question is, what brings that kind of odd surrealist element to my work, and what sort of inspires that in my day-to-day? I do watch a lot of sci-fi and read a lot of sci-fi, and when I say read, I mean I audiobook it in my studio. I read a little bit, not as much as I should. I love horror and mystery, things like that. I'm also reading right now. I'm forgetting who the author is, of course, because I'm live. It's a book about it's called Rabid. It's a book about the history of rabies, and how a lot of our monster culture or terror culture or horror culture has come out of like just that particular disease that still exists in the world today and is still passed on, and are just really interesting and terrifying thing. But also, the book is written also with some elements of humor and other aspects to it. I think that so there are certainly those surreal elements in the work, but I think part of my feeling, my use of distorted body, distorted faces, it's really based less on any kind of fixed lexicon of surreal images versus just my desire to make something emotionally compelling. So to make something dramatic. So the characters and the individuals hopefully are expressing themselves in a very dramatic way, or at least, if not, like, when I say dramatic, I don't mean like the explosion part of the drama. I mean sort of the simmering part of the drama. So I'm hoping that if there's a quietude in the piece and the character's there, that you're reading that character, and that you're sort of seeing the simmering, and you're wondering what is going to be that drama that emerges from that character at any given time. So I'm hoping I'm setting up some tension within these portraits for that particular thing. In the drawings I used to do more, I would have sometimes have multiple characters, or I'd have characters with more props. I may get to that in the painting, but I felt that for now just dealing with something like portraits would be just giving me a little grounding, a little set of parameters to work within, versus just going completely crazy, because I didn't want to get so in that I didn't produce anything. I wanted to produce something that was hopefully compelling. So yeah, so I think those surrealist elements really are driven by the trying to create emotional content within the work. Yeah.
What's your work that you sort of like as far as your work? You're really prolific. Like this is, for example, this is all really recent work, right? How old?
Yeah, well, it's over a year, but there's a series of color paintings that came before this. There's sort of those collage pieces I did. Actually, to get from drawing to the painting, since I was completely intimidated by painting because I hadn't done it for so long, I needed a transition period, and you don't see that work in here, but it was available. It has been available in the store, and you can see it online. But what I did is I took a bunch of paper. So here I am in my comfortable element of working on paper, and I took a lot of watercolor and colored pencils, which I had been working with, and then I just made a bunch of eyes, noses, mouths, and then head shapes, faces, with just putting on like rougey splotches, eye shadows, things like that. And then I would cut the paper into the shape of the head, and then I would sort of lay it all out onto a panel. And I usually would paint the panel with house paint. I know it's just some people are horrified by the idea that one would use house paint, but it has it has some great pigment in it, and it has has the ability to has primer. So if you make errors or mistakes, and you want to carve something out and leave some element behind, you can make a nice clean line all the way around and just eliminate all that noise in the background if you want to. Or you can just put it on thin, and like in the case of this piece, you can let a lot of the noise come through in layers if you want. So I would have that colored panel, and I would start laying down those pieces, and it gave me a chance to move them around. Oh yes, that's all hand done paper that's been cut to shape and then assembled for those pieces. Yeah, so yeah, good example. So yeah, you see this watercolor, colored pencil in here, and just with the background. Some of the drawing element is still there, and then I can just cut it out. And the thing is, I can move. So, for example, the arm with the cigarette in it, and even the cigarette itself is an independent piece, and I could move it around and figure out exactly where to position that so that I could create the best, visual drama for that. And so that was just a way of working where I could be comfortable with the idea of creating something in color and something that had some element of subtractive process. And then I could just completely obliterate or throw away something if I wanted to. So that was, I did like 20 of those just to get to, you didn't see those in the show, but I did 20 of those just to get to this point. so that I was ready to then go into actual painting and not be so terrified, and not just feel like, well, it's easy. I think it's easy if you start a new medium, you get to a certain point, and then you realize that you know, if you're not having success, at least some small element of success within the first probably the first couple of hours of working with it, but really first couple of days, then people can get disheartened, and then the energy sort of peters out, and then you're really not going forward with it, and people have a tendency to fall back on what they know, and then, you know, so I had actually had many of those experiences that I have a whole flat file full of things that nobody will ever see, you know, that because it reminds me that, you know, there's a whole body of work that gets made, whether it's in your mind or it's actually physical, that is kind of a failure, you know.
Well, it's a step.
It's a step, yeah, and I think it's important to fail, and make failure part of the process as well, and try not to be afraid of that, you know, because the fail sometimes, and then the accident can be what you can see as the failure could be the accident, and then when you can remanipulate the accident or exploit it or use it in some other way that you didn't expect, then it becomes the happy accident. So that's where I got that idea. And, you know, in art school we had teachers who would talk about the happy accident. And when I went to school, expressionist painting was still very important, so all that very expressive way of working was paramount. Yeah. So, and then the accident was like, we always talked about it, and as a new student I was like, yes, I think I know what that is, and then I really had no idea what that was. And it wasn't until years of working that I realized, oh, this is what this is. You know.
Knowing when to recognize exactly.
Yeah, when to recognize it, when to use it, when an accident is really just a mess and you're going to eliminate it, whether the piece should be tossed, whether it can be worked on and salvaged, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, for sure. Any other? Where am I going from here? Yeah, I might. You know, it's funny. I did those head cutout pieces. So the question is, where am I going from here after this work? I've been working on some pieces on paper for art fair in Paris. I had just shipped those out, so that was going sort of back a little bit to some pencil and colored pencil and graphite. And I sent those off. I still feel those are actually quite playful. I think the gallery initially was a little concerned about what appeared to be a very big leap in my work, but then when they saw how the drawing is sort of helping me bridge that a little bit, then they really started to appreciate those drawings, and that's what they wanted. So when they saw those much looser, more expressive, what I consider somewhat silly character drawings that hopefully have other layers in them, that was happening. So hopefully more work on paper. But also these, and I have a show coming up in Portland that has more of the sculptures that you're seeing, these bust sculptures, and more of this kind of painting, character painting, that's going up there with, I have two other artists I'm showing with, and it's Lisa Erickson and Heiko Mueller. That should be an interesting show. It should be fun. That's going to be at Antler Gallery. Crystal's shown there. They're nice folks, super nice folks, easy to work with. But yeah, I would like to continue. I actually want to work a little bit more with the cutouts again and start making more characters. Not as big as I've done in the past, where I've made these, 13-foot wide pieces, but just maybe something a little more within this size range here. And I like the idea of not just doing the shape, because I was describing this before to Frank when he came in. The idea that when you make a blank for the sculpture, you're working with those parameters. So, and then you add to it, and the play space is a little. It starts off with some planning, and then there's the play space there, and then it ends with a little bit of planning. Whereas the paintings, the play space can be throughout the painting pretty much. I mean, there's some planning involved, but I can completely destroy that. And whereas sculpture, I mean, aside from getting out a saw or a hammer and really just going to town on that, which I've done. So the cutouts are kind of an in-between, because the cutout, I just sketch out shapes of heads, and with no real preconceived idea of where the noses, eyes, or whatever should go within that. And I just let the shape then dictate to me, set the parameters for the play space. So there was a little planning in the beginning, some play space afterwards. But now I want to really push that and have the characters really not fit into those shapes. So I want to force the character to be wedged into that shape in a very uncomfortable way. There's an artist, Troy Lovegates. I can't remember what his street art name is. Does anybody remember? Other, maybe? Is it Other? That sounds, I don't know. Anyways, he super talented guy. I've just been watching his stuff on Instagram, and he makes these wood carved sculptures. and then he really puts this beautiful rendered painting on them, but the way the heads are turned on them and the way the body is manipulated on them, as they rotate, I mean, or you would walk around them, it looks like it would have some logic, and then all of a sudden it's very much jammed in there in a very uncomfortable way. And so it just, you really feel that, like, you know, that physical discomfort of that human existence of that particular little character as you walk around it. I would love to be able to try to achieve that in that sort of cut-out, flat version of that. Something like that, my version of it, whatever that would be. So I'm going to try that a little bit. Yeah, we'll see. I've got a bunch of ideas. I always have ideas. And I keep a whiteboard in my studio, and then I email myself. I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm like, I have this idea. I'm like, and then, so for example, I just sent myself an email from last night that said upside down rainbow. But I woke up this morning and read that. I was like, what did he mean by upside down rainbow, you know? So hopefully I'll figure that out, you know, what that is, you know. We'll see. But yeah, the idea is that I just try to give myself cues going forward. Yeah.
Would you mind talking about how you support yourself as an artist?
Sure. I have a great wife, Mary, over there, who's got a great job and great insurance. That's part of it. And then I've done contract work for her company, doing everything from a little HTML to some spreadsheet work. A lot of times it's work that requires a skill set, but isn't necessarily work you want to take people who have very good skill sets or well-paid people to do all that stuff. And then you can take a contractor and give that person that work. And I just put on headphones, and I love it. I mean, I just go in and do it and put in the hours, and it pays very well. And then also I've done commercial work for restaurants and beer bars where I'll do a piece. I did one for the Dock down on Linden Street. It was 2 big panels that went in the main restaurant, and it was just hops. It was kind of an interesting piece because it was like hop vines that actually had electrical plugs sticking out of the ends of them, because it had become a brewery, but previously that building was it was a cable company where they made wire. They made electrical wire back when electricity was just coming into Oakland. So that was the history of that. So trying to tie the history together. Surprisingly, those, you know, in the Trappist is a good example. I've done T-shirts for the Trappist. I've done some installation pieces for the Trappist in McKellar Bar in San Francisco. And those jobs pay pretty well, actually. I'm not that much of a hustler for that kind of work. I have a very hard time with clients in general. I feel like, you know, I really admire people who can do commercial work like that, where they have the patience to do a back and forth review process with the client and then have that come out, and that's never been my strong suit. I literally will give some people like 2 or 3 options and first round, and then, you know, I say, like, if you're going to edit me beyond this point and not pick a direction, then we're just going to part ways. So I'm not a very good businessman in that way. I really am not. It's only because I just don't have the patience for that kind of client interaction. But I admire people who can do that. If I was more geared to that, I probably would be doing more of that work. Yeah. So yeah. So it's, you know, Oakland's expensive, but, you know, we've been here for quite some time. So I feel like, you know, we're as long as we stay where we are. No, I'm kidding. But it's tough. It's tough for artists. You know, it's one thing to live in a less expensive place and work hard. That's one option for a lot of people. But if you decide you're going to live in the Bay Area, that can be a real challenge. And unless you create some sort of support structure or have something around you that helps support your art. And I think very few artists really do support themselves directly with their art. Usually people have some sort of help. I think back in, I want to say prior to 2008 maybe, there was sort of a lower level market of, I want to say, like sub $1,000 pieces of artwork that artists could actually sell. And there was because there was a lot of .com money around, a lot of real estate money around, and people would buy, but they wanted to buy, everybody still wanted the deal. They may not have been big art collectors per se, but they wanted art and they would buy less expensive art. So I knew a lot of artists who were able to sell enough to get by, but then that dried up, and, you know, when the economy crashed, a lot of that dried up, and a lot of those people I know are just not making art anymore. They're doing something else to make money, which is unfortunate because a lot of them are very talented. They may be making art on their own, I don't know. But yeah, I think almost everybody who still makes it on a pretty regular basis either supplements it with some sort of other job or income, or has a very helpful person who makes their life a lot easier, you know, allows that to happen. So
Great question, and I asked that almost every artist. You're really prolific. Obviously, you figured out a way to keep making your work because you need to and you enjoy it.
Yeah.
But there's a trick. Right?
Yeah.
There's a trick that
Yeah. It's a balance. It is, I mean, everything in life is a balance. Yes.
Exactly.
So, and I think that a lot of our distress in life is when things are out of balance. So, you know, there's I can't remember. We had a friend from Massachusetts who used to say, you know, she used to say that it was at the triangle, the triumvirate, or something like that. But it was love life, like home being, you know, your family and your love life and all that, your job, and then your transportation. Like somehow that was really a big factor because if you had a car and you needed that car and that car broke down, everything else went under stress. So I always thought that was kind of a funny arrangement. But I look at it like no matter, even if stuff is totally out of balance in your life, the one great thing about being an artist is that or as just any creative person, if you practice your craft and you're creative, that can be your salvation to get through those parts that are very stressful in your life that are out of balance, I think. So we have that unique opportunity to at least work it out. It's almost like our own homemade therapy that we use to get through those situations. So.
And you build your life around the fact that you need to make art, regardless if it's
Oh, yeah.
or not.
Yeah, I mean, there have been times in my life where I've worked full time and still have managed to hopefully put in 20 hours a week or more in the studio. Really, mostly because if I don't, then I am a very unhappy person and I am out of balance. I think it's, you know, a lot of people see the type of work I do, and they can see it as being very. Then when they meet me, they don't necessarily associate me with that work because I probably come across as a fairly balanced, regular person. But it's because I could do this work that I can have this sort of demeanor, you know. Otherwise, I probably would be going postal somewhere, or I don't know what I would be doing, but I would probably look a lot more like some of my characters. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Right. I know. These appendages. Yeah. Yes, Fred.
Yeah. Now, one thing I've always liked about you is you seem to be very supportive of all the other artists in this community. I go to a show and you're almost there.
Right.
And you did a whole series, I think you did 2 or 3 series of Hands in the Pants, where you work with, I don't know, dozens of other local artists.
Yeah. Over 100 artists involved. Not all local, but probably mostly local. And some artists have worked in multiple formats. They have done it several times with me who are local, who just simply because of the proximity they were to me. And they would see me producing these drawings of hands and pants with a big blank space in between them, and knowing that I was going to give them to somebody to finish, an artist to finish as part of a collaborative process. And yeah, so Hands and Pants started off, I had a show at Swarm Gallery. I wanted to create something a little more community-oriented on one of the walls. I was talking with Svea, the gallerist, and she had said, you know, maybe we can do a print or we can do something that might be at a different accessibility level for people, price-wise. And so what I decided to do is, why not do this? Some people do mail art and other collaborative things where they mail art off to somebody and then they get it back and they go back and forth. I just thought, okay, what's a motif I use quite a bit? I love the hands. I don't know if you figured that out yet. And I, for whatever reason, all my characters, when I was doing the drawing and the full-scale character, I would put them in jeans or pants. So I was very much into the clothing that my characters were wearing, and I decided that and they always had shoes too, usually, or bare feet, or some of them had sneakers or whatever, or boots. But I would make those drawings, and then I would give them to an artist. And so Hands and Pants, I think it's Swarm. I'm not sure how many I had. At least 30 artists in that show. We've gone to Hands and Pants 5. I know we've had 5 shows, and mostly in the Bay Area. And I'm probably at like 105 artists. Probably had over 120 pieces made. And the sale thing is kind of interesting because the gallery. It's a kind of a funny thing to bring to a gallery because you have to say to them, you know, we have to break it down this way. So you guys have to agree to 40%. You know, it's breaking it down in a way that I want the artist to get at least 50% of their work, and then I get some small $20 thing out of it. Or, you know, I get like a token thing, and then the gallery gets some percentage. But they agree to go less than 50% usually, and that's never really been an issue because of the sheer volume of drawings that are going up. And then, yeah, if we sell them, that's great. But for me, it was never really about selling them. It was more, I thought what was really going to happen with that body of work. And I have to say, every piece that came in, every artist who's ever participated in this has surprised me, and with like the quality and the effort and the sincerity that they put into the work. And it's completely blown my mind, because and every time if I do it by mail or they drop it off, it really is like Christmas. It's like opening up a Christmas present. And I'm just blown away all the time by what people have created. So for me, it's very rewarding to have that give and take with those individuals. But collectively, it makes me feel really positive to see it up. And I think when those artists come and see themselves as part of that collective, it really generates this collective positivity. And they see the whole thing. I think originally my concept of the whole thing was that it would look like a character, like one single character going through multiple iterations. But then I said it really just became this huge dysfunctional tribe or family that all sort of they all were related to each other, and they all sort of went to the same tailor or something. But other than that, they really were just all together, because that's how Oakland is as an art group. It's just a huge dysfunctional, or refunctional, or however you want to call it. Like any family, it's like a big family or a big tribe of people who we all kind of know each other and work together. And but there's always new people coming and going. There's a lot of new energy, so I try to add people if I go along. Hopefully I'll do a Hands and Pants 6 soon. I'd like to do a book as well. I scan everything high res, so that day may come around. We'll see. But yeah, as far as not to make the answer of this that much longer, but as far as why I support other artists within the community, is that I feel that artists, we're an easily exploitable group in a way. There's been a lot of chatter about how artists are often asked to work for free, or they're not supported, or galleries might take advantage of them. Compound Gallery, huge exception, because these guys are awesome and they're great. Actually, when a gallery is very professional and they treat their artists well, that reputation goes on, and people understand that. And so I'll just stop for a second and say how enjoyable this experience has been for me. And I've had a number of enjoyable experiences with galleries, and I've also had a number of not so enjoyable experiences with galleries and organizations. But as far as artists supporting artists, I feel that if we don't support ourselves, then we could become very isolated. And I try to say to young artists, there's a whole concept of pay it forward. It doesn't have to be an immediate give and take or direct give and take with somebody. It would be nice if you pay it forward. Oh, for example, if you have a show, or you approach a gallery, and the gallery may not love your work, so you at least get some time with them. You drop it off. They may not like it, or may not be feeling it. But if you bother to say thank you, and you bother to say thank you for your time, for looking at this, that's a positive thing you're putting forward. Then later, when they have other galleries who are putting a show together, they may think of you because they thought, well, this person was a very positive person putting this forward, so why would they not recommend you to that other gallery? So that may be, so you're just planting a seed forward on yourself, on just making that presence. And another example would be, all right, say you're in a group show, and you come in and there are other artists working in the group show. Very often I will bring tools or whatever to hang my stuff, and then once my stuff's up, I immediately go to help other artists hang their stuff. And the idea behind that is simply that person will hopefully remember that positive thing, and they'll do that for somebody else, so that we relieve their stress, And then if they think in the future of doing some sort of collaboration or some project, they might consider you because they would think that you were the person who would put in that extra effort to do that kind of thing. But at the same time, I think it just makes you feel better if you leave a situation and you've helped some people around you go forward. I would hope that most people feel good about that, So, yeah, it is that simple.
That's how we roll.
Right. Yeah, you guys definitely roll that way for sure. Yeah. As a gallery, it does come back. Yeah, it does come back. Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
Do you have any more questions? Any other thoughts, John?
Thoughts? It's funny. My wife asked me, she said, "Is there any question you want me to ask that anybody would forget?" And I'm sure after this is all over, I will think of several. But yeah, no, just that I've gotten a lot of good response with this work. I know it's for me, it's a big leap. I know for a lot of people look at this work and they definitely see a clear, all the core elements of all this character making is still John Casey character making. But for me, it was a bit really kind of frightening and a bit of a challenge to leap out and just do something that, because people had definitely recognized the prior work. So I think it can be risky for artists to do that, but then there's a huge reward. And I think that the people who continue to follow that artist afterwards, I mean, you're going to lose some of your audience if you make a big change. It's just bound to happen. You know, musicians go through that kind of thing all the time. But I think that based on the positive response I'm getting out of this and how I feel about it and the direct relationship I'm having back and forth with the viewers, I feel like it's much more direct and much more playful. That I'm hoping that I can continue that going forward.
I mean,
And it's
from
just
an outside perspective, it's still all very relative.
right.
I mean, perhaps to you, it's a totally different process.
Right.
But
Yeah, I know. It's the artist is always the one who thinks that they're going. This is very dramatic, you know. I'm going through this big change, and I'm having an epiphany, you know. And all of it, and everybody's looking at you like, dude, it's your work. It's still your work, you know. Yeah.
you want to talk about your print on the counter?
Oh yeah. So I wanted to make a print. Thank you. So Jean Lorenz is a printmaker, and she was a compound artist for quite some time, and I got to know her. And I did a lecture for her class up at Solano College, and I got such a good response from those kids. And then we printed T-shirts up there of some characters I made, which was great. And then I said to her, I would like to make an exclusive print just for this show. Like, this would be it. And I don't want it to be, I don't want to get too down on the idea of doing digital prints, but I feel like it's almost too easy, you know? So maybe I'm a little old school, but I thought, let's do something handmade or hand-pulled. It could be a silk screen, it could be a lithograph, it could be an etching. And we decided to go with a lithograph. And that's what this ended up. This is basically a hand-pulled lithograph. And we made a whole bunch of them, but I just picked out 10. So it's really a series of 10. And I have a couple of artist proofs, and then I destroyed the rest. But yeah, and I hand colored in the lips and the eyes. I tried to keep it really minimal with the color, just because I thought the line work would look nice, just the way it was. So this is this is really probably more about the transition that I've gone through, between just pure drawing and then just some color work, but still having a lot of fun with it. So yeah. So I don't know how many are left. 4 left. Yeah. So yeah, and they're $60. I mean, they're whatever. It's a good deal. So I don't know. I just wanted I wanted somebody to have the ability to get something, and not if the price point was too much for them. Otherwise, to have it. But for this one, they could hopefully afford this. So yeah. I had a lot.
Directly on the plate?
I did not. I actually did the drawing separately, and then I used a Pronto plate. Yeah. So we printed on the Pronto, but then I would go in and I actually did a little bit of I would move it around and try to clean it up and just, give it. It's really, I didn't realize that lithograph is such an interesting way to work. It's so strange. And then you put all this oil-based ink on there, and it only sticks to the. It just doesn't look like it should work. So and then I see Jean rolling it out with this big roller, and she's all like, I feel like she's a mad scientist, like she's very excited about it, and then she pulls it up, and I'm like, how does that work? Yeah, so I really left a lot of the actual printing part of it to her because she's the expert, and I did a little bit of it, but then I was really more the cleanup guy. Like, I ran around and cleaned plates up, and I would get the paper wet, and I would get it ready and prep everything. But yeah, we just hung out and we cranked up the metal and just had the classroom to ourselves on the off break. And so my trade for that is I'll do another lecture for her with a new class. So we'll get to talk to some new kids. Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah.
I think your work lends itself
to printmaking in general. Yeah, I'd like to do more of that. And I've also heard animation, so now I'm, especially with the cutout paper pieces I've done, because then those could all be moved around and scanned independently. So now I have to learn After Effects. Now I have to learn printmaking. Can you teach an old dog new tricks? I hope so. We'll see. I'm just saying. Yeah. So hopefully I'll have time for that.
Any other questions? Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about the words and the graphics in your work?
Yeah, that's sort of a new thing for me. I think that sort of came out of the idea of doing the graphic tees and that I've done this T-shirt work. So initially, they really came out mostly on the sculpture to begin with. So obviously, the Motorhead T-shirt is a Motorhead T-shirt. The Budweiser T-shirt's a Budweiser T-shirt. But I like the idea. I like the play of And actually, the funnier thing, I think, is when you have like somebody who probably doesn't quite look like they should have that shirt on. So I have young Neil, who's kind of this little hipster guy who's very ironically wearing the Neil Young T-shirt. He's probably telling his young friends, like, dude, you got to hear this guy. He's amazing and whatever. But, you know, like Neil Young, we all know that Neil Young's been around forever. And he was young and hip at one point. And so I think he's wearing it maybe a little ironically. I'm not sure. But yeah, as far as like some of the other pieces where, like for this one here, Oddly Curious, I just, you know, I like the idea of putting word tattoos on people. And I remember seeing the woman who had Drake tattooed on her head. Does everybody remember that? And yeah, it was horrible. But so the boyfriend had convinced her to put Drake on with this like script, and it was just, I was like, wow, that is such a bold thing. And I've seen, you know, people will have this really beautiful like text work on their arms or their necks or whatever. And I just thought, because I do this work where I feel like the distortion on the body is emanating from inside emotionally, coming forward, that almost these tattoos could emerge on their own and be very, and then I started getting very, very literal. So not just on the T-shirt, but on the skin, and it would come out. And so like, that's almost like we could be LED billboards, you know, as humans, if we walked around like that, and we could have that emotion push forward and then create a tattoo. Could be temporary, could be permanent, you know, so.
The South American gang tattoo stuff on the faces, like, wow.
Yeah, it's serious. That's serious. That's a lifestyle. That's a big life choice. Yes.
Reflective of each individual. That's what I know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, powerful. Very
We're
powerful.
all in jail.
Well, yes. Yeah. Not an easy lifestyle. No, not at all. Not an easy life choice. Yeah, that's pretty much where that came from. Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for coming out.
Thank you. Yeah, right. What? It's John Casey's Artist Talk.